Redo You, the podcast that teaches you tools and strategies so you can build the confidence to rediscover and reinvent yourself. With me, Emma Hull, your favorite life coach. Each week, I'll introduce a concept that you can implement right away so you can live your most authentic life. Let's get started. Grief is a process, and more often than not, it's a messy one. The thing is, there is no playbook for grief. It's going to be different for each individual, and then it's also going to show up differently at different times throughout your life. So you may process grief differently from situation to situation. I encourage you to allow yourself to process. The worst thing that you can do is try to push it down, take a stiff upper lip and get on with it. When you do that, all it does is just builds up inside until eventually that dam bursts and it all comes out in one go. Schedule time for yourself to do your grieving. Maybe you allow yourself a few minutes at the beginning or end of each day, or if you're feeling particularly tearful and sad at any one particular moment in the day, you stop what you're doing and allow yourself to feel that grief. Allow yourself to feel all the emotions that come up. Grief is often accompanied by sadness, but anger, resentment, frustration can also be emotions that show up powerfully for someone who's grieving. Allow yourself to feel all of those emotions without guilt. Allow yourself to be honest with what you're feeling. Don't diminish any grief, that you're experiencing. Saying like, oh, it was just my dog or just a friend. That's not the case. All grief is valid. And sometimes we can be surprised at how hard it hits us when we're just really not expecting it. And sometimes it can be a cumulative effect of other grief that you haven't processed that then comes up through that current grief. So back to what I said about scheduling time. Like, make sure that you are actually intentionally processing. Most of the time what people do is keep themselves busy. I want you to actually make time, put it in your calendar, schedule it, book it out to allow yourself to grieve. If you feel incredibly sad but can't cry, put on a sad movie, listen to a sad song. Help release those tears and bring them out for yourself. If you feel like laughing, go ahead and laugh. It's okay to remember the good times as well as being sad. The more you take that grief off the shelf and spend time with it, the less intense the emotion is going to be. And gradually you will shift from that loss to being able to be more in a space of celebrating life. Another great thing to do is to plan ahead for anniversaries. So, when the actual anniversary of the passing, but maybe it's the anniversary, like my mom's birthday, things like that. Where possible, plan ahead and have something in mind for yourself, some kind of self-care, or perhaps an activity to honor whoever it is that you're grieving. And think about that, plan for that day, have support networks available to you. Clear your calendar if you need to so that you can have that space to grieve. Something else that we really don't tend to do, but that is extremely helpful, is to have conversations about grief before it happens. I was fortunate that with both of my parents, but especially with my mom, we were able to have some really good conversations before she passed. I asked her how she was going to come back to me, and she let me know that she'd come back as a hummingbird. So every time I see a hummingbird, I know that that's her. And I buy books, any notebooks with hummingbirds on, coffee mugs. But because we'd spoken about grief about what it was going to be like to lose her, that helped to cushion the impact and to remind me of how I'd committed to navigating it for myself. Above all, remember that grief is a messy process and that there's no way to do it wrong. Just approach your grief with love and compassion and allow yourself to process, and know that with time it will gradually become less intense.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Reader You podcast. Remember to subscribe, rate and review, and tell a friend, because together we rise even higher. See you next Friday.